So Nick, can I ask you about the ICA, the involvement you had with the Institute of Contemporary Arts in London?
Yeah.
You were a director of music?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
How did you manage to get that job, which sounds like another great job?
Yeah, I used to go there a lot. I think we were saying before, basically you're familiar with this.
Yeah, I used to bunk off work and go and watch films and check out the exhibitions there all the time. It was a godsend.
Yeah. It's such an important place for me as well. You know, I used to just go there and just hang out there a lot. I used to run a night there.
Okay.
Yeah, like a music event. I think it was called Soul Tech Sessions, if I remember rightly.
Okay.
With this guy Simon Vincent, who was a drum and bass producer who did some work on Good Looking Records.
Okay, yeah.
And now he's a pianist, composer.
Okay.
Completely different.
Yeah.
But also really good. And so we used to do this night, and I got to know this guy called Andrew Missingham, who was running the kind of music side of it. You know, just got to know people there really. And then this position came up, which they mentioned as director of music, basically looking after the music policy of the ICA.
Yeah, okay. Again, like I said, sounds like a plum job. It sounds like a great job.
It really did, does. And I kind of, I just applied for it, and then I got it. So I did that for, wasn't a very long time, 2 or 3 years, something like that. But in that time, booked things like, I'm trying to think of things. I remember booking Mogwai to play like 5 nights in a row. Okay. One of the gigs we did. I started this collaboration with this group called Dirty Canvas, and they were basically one of the first dubstep and kind of grime collectives that were looking to take the music out of the kind of estates into the
art world.
Yeah, into the art world, exactly. Yeah. It's a really good idea, and it was a way of just, you kind of, I don't know, just making the music more accessible to more people, I suppose.
Yeah, okay.
In a way. And especially, you know, they knew that a lot of women were really into music, and they wanted to find a kind of space that would enable them to feel a little bit more comfortable than you know, I mean, I think once everybody was in that environment, they were fine, but just sometimes the thought of kind of going to a place they weren't really familiar with.
Sure.
And the ICA provided that kind of sort of venue that was kind of, I mean, you know, it's on the same road as Buckingham Palace. It doesn't get much more extreme.
Yeah.
And those nights were great. They were always really busy, and the people who ran that did an incredible job to get some, you know, brilliant grime artists there, and it always worked well. It was just, you know, lots of happy, smiley faces. So we did that, and then we did a folk night as well, called Roots and Shoots, which is all about that new folk movement at that time.
Yeah. What kind of artists were you working with there?
So on the folk thing, someone like James Yorkston was one of the, you know, so he was someone that I remember booking.
Music with Cider is the one I know.
That's it, yeah, that's the one. Yeah, it's a beautiful track.
Yeah, it's great.
And it was just that whole thing. I even booked not Fleetwood Mac, that would have been quite amazing. Fairport Convention, which is also, you know, that was pretty cool. So they played. So we kind of, I think that's how it ended. I think we kind of started off with kind of slightly more underground thing, and we ended up with the, you know, the originators of folk rock.
Yeah,
one of the originators in the UK. So it's kind of pretty broad thing. And like I said, I was only there for 2.5, 3 years.
Okay. Another job you've had is with Apple and iTunes. What were you doing with Apple?
I was
you're another music director, weren't you, in some ways?
I was a music editor. I think the title was Chief Music Editor for Europe.
Okay.
Basically.
And what did that involve?
It basically involved every week just window dressing the iTunes store. So choosing all the music that you would see.
What people see that's sort of promoted to people.
Yeah. So just selecting where, you know,
good things, recommendations.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it. And so it was a lot of not programming as much, but sort of like just, you know, just putting together
just
these.
Being aware of best the new stuff that was around. Yeah. Okay.
That's it. But across Europe, so there were people doing it in the UK, and at that time, when I joined, it was before the iPhone came out, so it was a pretty small team.
Yeah.
And then it was just me running 16 countries in Europe, I think. So it was kind of a bit of a nuts job. But that was good. That was really good. And interesting to work for a company when that transition, before they kind of went huge after.
Before they took off. Yeah.
when the iPhone came out, then it was just like a different company, really. So,
and something else you were involved in was Music City. Can you tell me what Music City is or was? I'm afraid I don't know.
Yeah, sure, yeah. So it's very much alive. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's pretty much 80% of my time.
Oh wow. Okay.
For me, it's like my main project right now.
Put my foot in it now.
No. It's great to talk to you about it. It's really good. Essentially, it's been running for 10 years, and the project is I commission music from different musicians and sound artists, and they create a response to architecture in different parts of the world.
Okay.
So, for example, in Japan in 2012, we worked with Roppongi Art Night, and 10 Japanese and British artists each composed a piece of music inspired by a different place in Roppongi.
Okay.
And then through an app, you basically go to the location to hear the track.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a nice way of not running a record label. It's a bit like a label, but it's all digital, and it's
but I like that thing of like you've got the music that's inspired by the location, and you're in that location. Yeah, it's a really nice idea. Yeah,
it's pretty simple, but it's and so now this year we've just relaunched the whole project with a new website, and we're just.
Does that take you prior to the pandemic? That obviously takes you around the globe. Does that take you?
It does. Yeah. So we've the last few years we've worked in 3 cities in China. In Korea, in the UK, in Oslo, in Estonia. So we've been kind of doing things with local musicians in different places.
Yeah. Really interesting project.
That's cool. It takes a lot of time. That's all right.
I mean, you mentioned record labels there. Are you working with any labels at the moment?
Yeah, so I'm working for a couple. I work for Non-Classical, which is a kind of classically inspired record label.
Well, you expand a bit there. I mean, classically inspired. Isn't it like reinterpretations or remixes of classical pieces? Is that right?
Yeah, some of it is. Yeah, and then some of it is like the original pieces by modern composers, I suppose. So we've got. Gabriel Prokofiev, who founded the label, he's the grandson of Sergei Prokofiev.
Right, okay.
So he's a composer, and he releases some of his music there. And then we work with electronic artists who are kind of, composing through electronics. Music Concrete. There's a group called Langham Research Collective that make music concrete. And then we've got slightly more traditional in that they're using traditional instruments, like cellists and violins and everything. So it's kind of like a very broad mix of music that is classical, but it's all about how that music's presented in a much more kind of indie.
Well, that kind of like that modern post-classical thing seems to be, that's grown, isn't it? It's quite a popular area now.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's huge, yeah.
Quite friendly with the people who run 130701.
Oh yeah,
Dave Howell and those
label.
guys. Really, and it's important music, I think, because it touches on classical tradition, but it's off into the future at the same time, isn't it? And in some ways, it is a bit like science fiction in that it's documenting a science fiction that's the day after tomorrow. Sometimes it's a challenging listen, but it's always worthwhile.
That's it. It is. It is. Yeah. Sometimes that's, I things I've been listening to this week. I've been listening to the new Ariana Grande album, which is so impressive in that it's so instant. It's like it doesn't require very much in terms of your. What am I looking for? What am I trying to say? This. You don't need to give an awful lot. It gives a lot, right?
Yeah, and so it's accessible.
It's super accessible, and the singles are it's just straight away. It's just so impressive how producers and artists can make those kind of records. But then I'm also fascinated by those things that you may not get for 10 or 12 listens, and then it kind of makes sense. Well, I think for me that kind of music is important because it's kind of documenting the time in a way. That's true. Yeah, absolutely.
I do find some of it challenging, and it's always like a really deep listen, so you might feel exhausted afterwards.
Yeah.
It's as when you look back across the catalogue of those things, it will be important. I think.
Yeah,
It'll be important.
totally agree. I absolutely agree with you. Yeah.